Good morning, Unity Spiritual Center, and welcome to our service this morning. I am the Reverend Karen Shepherd, and I am giving Reverend Joanne a rest today. So I hope she's enjoying her day off. It's my pleasure to be here with you. Many of you see me around here because I come to workshops, I attend services. So some of you are probably familiar with me. My topic for today is strength to love, a tough mind and a tender heart. And these ideas are coming from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, a sermon that he did when he was in his heyday. And he tells the disciples when Jesus rises and Jesus leaves the disciples, and he does that because he wants them to stand on their own 2 feet. And his advice to them is to be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And that's from Matthew 10, verse 16. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus on our powers of strength and love. Now, the 12 powers is foundational to unity. And in my training, we do quite a bit with the 12 powers. And the ministers in churches that are headed by Unity Urban Ministerial School graduates, you will see much emphasis placed on the 12 powers. So we're going to talk about 2 of the 12 powers today. And just because we call them out individually, that does not mean that they don't work together, because they do. But we can apply them in different ways. So I'm going to focus on strength and love, strength to love, a tough mind and a tender heart. So our power of strength, and this is probably just a review for many of you. We know that Charles Fillmore came up with the idea of the 12 powers, but it has evolved through the years, and we've had things added. We had colors, we had disciples, and we had affirmations. All these things have been added as the 12 powers tend to evolve. And that's what we have to do constantly. We have to evolve. And that's what happened with that. The power of strength is represented by the disciple Andrew. And the area, because they give each of the 12 powers is given an area, and the loins and the small of the back. The color is spring green, and its aspects are stability, courage, tenacity, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Strength provides us with the stamina necessary to unfold our 12 gifts, and physical strength is vitality. When I was looking through my daily word for the week, the daily word for Wednesday reflected that. I am blessed with a vivacity, vim, and vigor. Now that makes you want to get up and go when you say that. Mental strength allows us to do the right thing. The 12 powers are gifts, act as a whole unit, but we do look at them individually to understand them better. Now, the second one we're going to talk about is love. Love, love, love. Not just I love ice cream, but we're talking about that agape love, because Dr. King talked about agape love, which is that all-encompassing love. And this is what we're talking about. Sometimes we trivialize love by saying that we love the color of that shirt. But love is much more than that. Love is represented by the disciple John, the son of Zebedee. He was the disciple whom Jesus loved, or as it says in John 20, verse 2, disciple beloved of Jesus. We know that Jesus and John were very close. And in the pictures of the Last Supper, you see John with his head on Jesus' shoulder. They were very close, and him representing love. And the 3 disciples that were most often with Jesus were Peter, James, and John. James and John were brothers. And that represents faith, love, and wisdom. Okay? But that doesn't mean that the other ones are not important. The location is the back of the heart. And the color is pink. And the aspects are the ability to attract, unify, and desire. Charles Fillmore described love as the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. Our powers have also evolved to the point where we give each one a month. We assign a month to each one, starting with faith in January. Now, they kind of I was a little confused at one point because they had February as love and April as strength, but now they switched them back, or I don't know what happened. I asked around, to try to find out, why did you change them around? Nobody could answer that question, and then Linda Martella-Witz told me, it doesn't matter. So, okay, it doesn't matter. But the theme this year deals with the 12 powers. So our theme for February was strength, and then the theme for April is love, which I think is much more fitting. Even though we have Valentine's Day in love, I think it's much more in February. I think it's much more appropriate to have love represented by spring. Isn't it beautiful? This is a beautiful day. It was a beautiful drive over here. I was greeted by a beautiful, I'm told, male duck with a green coloring on his neck. He was beautiful. And the minute I got close, he flew off. But then the female, when I came inside, the female was out there too. So I think it's good that we celebrate love in spring because it makes us feel good. Now, as far as Dr. King, what Dr. King said was he uses the serpent as a metaphor for the power of strength. And he uses the dove as a metaphor for the power of love. And many unity churches use the dove in their logo. Now, since they did this branding, you don't see that as much anymore, but many unity churches. When I attended Unity of Greater Cleveland, the dove was part of our logo, and the dove represents peace. So he began this sermon, A Tough Mind and a Tender Heart, by quoting a French philosopher. I'm not sure who, because he didn't say who, so I have to take his word for it. He says, "No man is strong unless he bears within his character antitheses strongly marked." He said that the strong man holds in a living blend strongly marked opposites. The idealists are usually not realistic, and the realists are not usually idealistic. The militants are not generally known to be passive, nor the passive to be militant. Seldom are the humble self-assertive or the self-assertive humble. But life at its best is a creative synthesis, a working together of opposites in fruitful harmony. The philosopher Hegel said, "Truth is found neither in the thesis nor the antithesis, but it is an emergent synthesis that reconciles the two." So again, characteristics working together to make the whole human. It says nobody is either all good or all bad. I don't know if it's appropriate to use that word in unity, but we have characteristics of each in us. I'm told that no woman is more than 80% female, and no male is more than 80% male, because that, again, speaks to the synthesis of the two kinds of characteristics. So in other words, what we're talking about here is, a friend of mine says she doesn't like this word, but I'll use it, balance. That's what it boils down to. Dr. King said that Jesus recognized the need for blending opposites, and he knew that the disciples would face a hostile and challenging world where they would have to confront hostile political officials who would be bent on protecting the old order. And we read about the disciples, and we know that some of them went through some really trying times. They were jailed. Peter was jailed several times, and then in the end, he was crucified upside down, so we're told. So they went through some things after Jesus left. It's probably many a time when they called out, "Jesus, where are you? Come back." That wasn't going to be. And that's why Jesus prepared them to go out into the world. And he said, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep among wolves." Matthew 10:16-20. In light of this, he gave them an action formula. He told them, "Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." And we know that serpent was a pretty wily little fellow in the Garden of Eden. And he got Eve to do something that she shouldn't have done, and then Adam followed her. But anyway, we're not talking about that today. Dr. King says that this means that we must combine the serpent's toughness, wiliness, cleverness, and with the softness of the dove, that gentle character. You ever watch doves and how they coo? Okay, that's their gentleness coming out. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we have to know the difference between the tough-minded and soft-mindedness. We cultivate the characteristics of a tender heart, and we cultivate the characteristics of a tough mind. And we recognize the need for a mixture of the two. So what does a tough mind include? A tough mind includes incisive thinking, realistic appraisal, and decisive judgment. The tough mind is sharp and penetrating, breaking through the crust of legends and myths and sifting the true from the false. The tough-minded individual is astute and discerning. He has a strong, austere quality that makes for firmness of purpose and solidness of commitment. The toughness of mind is one of man's greatest needs. He said that it is rare to find men who willingly engage in hard, solid thinking. Well, I would like to think that we do more often. There is an almost universal quest for easy answers and half-baked solutions. He said that nothing pains some people more than having to think. I have one in my family. You know, we're just too lazy to think about it. We don't want to think about it. And this is the hallmark of unity, and this is why unity isn't more of a larger movement than it is, because we encourage people to think for themselves, you know, to be critical, to use critical thinking. And many people are like, I don't want to do that. I just want to go to church and have somebody to tell me what to do. Well, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. We let you make up your mind. This is why I'm puzzled when people say that unity is a cult. It's like, we're not telling anybody what to do. We just don't do that. So soft-mindedness. Soft-minded individuals let others do their thinking for them or allow them to influence their thinking. In other words, they give their power away. And we all do that sometimes. I know I do. At times do that. And he gives several examples of what he calls soft-mindedness. And he says that advertisers have learned that most people, or many people, are soft-minded, which leads them to capitalize on our susceptibility with skillful and effective slogans. And there are many examples of this. In one example relating to myself, because if I can't relate it to somebody else, it lives in me, and I have to recognize that and admit it. There was a particular fast food place, and I won't say which one, who had not been in this area and was coming. So I was so excited. Oh, I'm going to go to this place, and I'm going to have the delicious offerings that they have. And I was on my way home from the west side, and because I live on the east side. So I stopped at this place, and I got an offering, and I took it home, and I was so disappointed. You know, so that's how advertisers can do that. Go and get this, go and get that. And then you get it and you decide, well, maybe I don't want this after all. Dr. King also cites the press and its ability to influence due to readers' failure to critically judge and discern the truth from the false or fact from fiction. He assessed that one of humanity's needs was to rise above the morass of false propaganda. He extended this to the willingness of people to embrace superstitions. You ever been in a hotel and looked at and got in the elevator and there's no button for 13? But it's still the 13th floor. I don't care how you label it. You can skip 13 and label it 14, but it's not the 14th floor, it's the 13th floor. So soft-minded people fear change. But as we know, everything changes. Everything must change. There's a famous song that many artists cover talking about everything must change, and that's true. Everything is going to change. This church is going to change. We were just talking about this before service. Things are going to change. We are going into what is going to be a new normal. Things are going to change. Soft-mindedness can lead to the belief that there is a conflict between science and religion. He states that there may be a conflict between soft-minded religionists and tough-minded scientists, but not between science and religion. And it's becoming, I have a cousin who is a scientist, and he says that the two are coming ever closer together. And many things that we talk about, metaphysical things, are being proven through science, such as the efficacy of prayer. It's been proven that prayer works. That's our thing here, prayer. Prayer works. So we make prayer our measure of first resort rather than last resort. You hear people say, well, I've done everything I can, so now I guess it's time to pray. Make that your first resort. Make prayer the first resort. Okay, the two are complementary, talking about science and religion. Sorry, I got off topic there a minute. Science keeps religion from sinking into the valley of crippling irrationalism and what he calls paralyzing obscurantism. So it keeps it from being too Twilight Zone. Religion prevents science from falling into the marsh of obsolete materialism and moral nihilism. What are the dangers of soft-mindedness? Dictators capitalize on soft-mindedness, leading men to unthinkable acts of barbarity and terror, such as the Holocaust. And right now, in some countries, we have certain groups being annihilated or being subject to the attempt to it being annihilated. And this is what soft-minded thinking leads to. Hitler realized that soft-mindedness was so prevalent among his followers that he said, I use emotion for the many and reserve reason for the few. In Mein Kampf, he asserted that shrewd lies, unremittingly repeated, make people believe that heaven is hell and hell heaven. The greater the lie, the more readily it will be accepted. Prejudice of all kinds results from soft-mindedness, rooted in groundless fears, suspicions, and misunderstandings. There is little hope for us until we become tough-minded enough to break loose from the shackles of prejudice and half-truths. The shape of the world today does not permit us the luxury of soft-mindedness. A nation or a civilization that continues to produce soft-minded men purchases its spiritual death on the installment plan. Dr. King said that we could not stop with the cultivation of a tough mind. The gospel also demands a tender heart. Tough-mindedness without tender-heartedness is cold and detached, leaving one's life in a perpetual winter, devoid of the warmth of spring and the gentle heat of summer. He asked the question, what is more tragic than to see a person who has risen to the disciplined heights of tough-mindedness, but has at the same time sunk to the passionless depths of hard-heartedness? The hard-hearted person never truly loves. He values other people according to their usefulness to him and never experiences the beauty of true friendship, because he is too cold to feel affection for another's joy or sorrow. He is an isolated island. No outpouring of love links him with the mainland of humanity. The hard-hearted lacks the capacity for genuine compassion, unmoved by the pains and afflictions of his brothers. He passes unfortunate men every day, but he never really sees them. He gives dollars to a worthwhile charity, but he provides not of his spirit. This individual never sees people as people, but rather as mere objects or as impersonal cogs in an ever-turning wheel. And Jesus illustrated the characteristics of the hard-hearted. There's a story in the Bible, Luke 16:19 through 31, called the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And he says, the rich man, he calls him Dives, went to hell not because he was wealthy, but because he was not tender-hearted enough to see Lazarus, and he made no attempt to bridge the gulf between himself and his brother. Jesus reminded us that the good life combines the serpent's toughness and the tenderness of the dove. Serpent-like qualities imply lack of passion, meanness, and selfishness. Dove-like qualities without serpent-like qualities tend to be sentimental, anemic, and aimless. We must combine the two, the balancing act that was referred to earlier. The tough mind, tender heart philosophy is the basis of our strength to love. Combining our strength and love powers with our other divine gifts helps us to express life more fully and completely. And again, we develop our 12 powers. That is the way to realizing Christ consciousness. And we do this under the direction of the Christ nature. So let's go out into the world and let's practice strength to love. Namaste.